shifting the blame this morning for the census failure to the ABS, saying that heads were wrong over this. Is that really the right response, and shouldn't the government be taking responsibility?
Well, the government is extremely disappointed, and as the Australian people are, about the disruption and inconvenience of the last few days in relation to what has occurred with the census. Now, the decision to move to an E-Census was taken back in 2011. And it was taken by the ABS at that time under the previous government, and indeed in the 13-14 budget, it was actually the previous government that put aside the appropriations, bringing forward appropriations to provide both the capital and recurrent funding that was needed to action that E-Census decision that was taken by that previous government. And we have, in supporting the ABS over since 2013 and that election, continued to implement those plans. There were capability reviews that were conducted on the ABS's IT systems. There was additional funding provided in the most recent budget of some over $270 million, and these agencies had been resourced to do this job. These agencies had conducted an extensive series of processes under various ministers, including those under the previous Labor government, to ensure that they would be ready for this day. And ministers have continued under the assurances that have been provided by those agencies for the processes they were given. Now, the failings of the other evening, following the attacks of the other evening, and which highlighted the weaknesses that presented, are very disappointing, because all of those processes that were followed and the stress testing that was conducted was intended to provide the assurance to the government that the events of the other night wouldn't have happened. So that takes us to the point of the systems failure that occurred after that attack. We are now working eagerly, particularly with the support of the Australian Signals Directorate, to ensure that today that site should be able to be restored. And it is important that once that has happened, that we continue to encourage people, and I would invite media and others in the political domain to support that collection. It's important information. It helps the planning of important services and important decisions that have to be made by governments at every level. And the ABS, I have no doubt, will be redoubling their efforts and their communications to encourage Australians to participate in that census. But there will be a thorough review into this, particularly into the actions of the service providers who were well resourced to do the job that they are asked to do.
But isn't the Prime Minister preempting that review by saying this morning that it's basically the ABS's fault?
Well, the ABS was running this program. And you need to remember that the ABS is an independent statutory authority which has a series of independent powers. And those independent powers, for example, include the decision to move to an E-Census. They include the decision to encourage all Australians to participate in the census electronically on one particular night. That's a decision of the statistician, because for the reasons that they can go into. It is a decision of the ABS to decide about how long those records are kept, as it was on this occasion. So they are an independent statutory authority who have those resources. They have a chief information officer. They are a capable, well-respected organisation with an unblemished record on data security for the census, an enviable record. And so they have earned that record, but on this occasion there has been a serious failing. And obviously we'll be looking very carefully into the reasons for that. But in my own assessment, in looking back over these issues, I mean, the tender process for the IBM contract was undertaken back in 2014, as I said, with resources provided for by the previous government, who set that chain in motion as to what the resource requirements would be to prepare for an E-Census. So this is a process that goes over 5 years. It goes over 2 governments, and the results the other night were completely unsatisfactory and make us, frankly, pretty angry. Damn angry.
At what point would you cancel the census if you don't get enough responses back? Would you just put it on hold and try again? And also, would you look at maybe instructing the ABS, if you could do that, to not store people's names, which is another big privacy concern about their names and addresses?
Well, on the first question, as I said yesterday with the Prime Minister, all of our advice from the statistician is that there is no compromise to the statistical integrity of the census based on the events of the last 48 hours. And that is why the ABS, both I and the Minister responsible and the Prime Minister have instructed them to redouble their efforts when it comes, and our own, to encourage people to engage in the census. That is the priority right now. And that's what we need to focus on. Work the problem. We work the problem on the IT issue, and we work the problem on encouraging Australians back into the census. And the success of that operation would mean that there would be no reason to do as you suggested. And so that's where our efforts are focusing. On the other matter, as I said, that is an independent decision of the statistician. And so that would require a careful consideration of where the powers of the government exist to override an independent statutory authority who make those decisions independently.
Has the government examined whether abandonment may be necessary?
Well, it's not a proposition that I've been advised has any likelihood. Sorry?
How confident are you on the ABS? Because obviously part of your job is allocating funding provided by data from the ABS. Given what we saw on Tuesday, how confident are you in the ABS?
Well, I'm very disappointed, I think, is the first thing to say. And I'm sure they're very disappointed too. And I think they and all the officers at the ABS have worked very hard over the last 5 years to bring about what was a worthy initiative to move towards an E-Census. That is I note the criticism made by the opposition of having a E-Census, but they neglect to say that decision was actually taken under their own government. But I think that was a worthy thing to pursue. Now, we're obviously very disappointed that in the execution of that, despite what had been well-resourced and strong planning over a long period of time, that was the result that occurred the other day. And whether those failings were predominantly in the area of the service provider or in the agency itself or other matters, well, that's what the review is for. And you can be very confident, given the elevated level of irritation and anger by the Prime Minister and I and the Minister, that review will do its job. Thank you very much.
That was the Treasurer, Scott Morrison, there speaking about the shutdown of the census website on Tuesday night. But